There are 5 other callers on the call.
So you might have already done some research on what is SAP HANA. From your research, you might have known that SAP HANA is a database, correct? So we already have so many databases in the market. We have Oracle, we have DB2, we have MathsDB, we have NoSQL databases. So there are so many databases in the market. And why is that SAP is pushing every other applications to be on HANA platform or on HANA database? So there were some issues that we started facing with the database management, due to which SAP has come up with their in-memory fast technology, database technology, that is SAP HANA. So we would be checking some reality, there are some issues. What were those issues that we faced? And how was that resolved in HANA? And second, we will have a brief introduction to SAP HANA. And then we have a course content that we will be discussing in our future classes. And let me tell you, as I'm not aware of each of yours background, some of you might be new to SAP and some might have already worked in BI or BO or ABAP. So this demo or this session would give you a basic overview of SAP. This might not contain very technical thing, okay? So if you have any questions on the technical aspect, you can go ahead and you can discuss with me at the end of the session. In between, if you have any question with respect to the demo, whatever we have having, you can check with me at the same time. Okay, and as I told that, this would not be a very technical thing. It would be a overview of HANA, and some of the features of HANA would be discussed in this session. As this would be a general topic to everyone, whoever from SAP or non-SAP background. Okay. So the first topic, that is the reality check. So one more thing, like I would request the participants to go on mute because I can hear the background noise.
Now you know what is data store. So data store is nothing but a table only.
I'm just muting you.
Muted.
You can unmute yourself. Okay, the first issue that we started facing was information explosion. So now we are terming this data as big data concept. So earlier, initially when we started facing the issue, that was called as information explosion. So information explosion is nothing but massive amount of data was being added to the net, the digital content. So this data, which was not only structured data, it was also the unstructured data. Unstructured data in the sense, we know the structured data. The concept of structured data is nothing but you have your data in your tables, two-dimensional tables in your database, which has a proper data type, and everything is defined and is structured under one database. So in your tables. So those are structured data. Then what do we mean by unstructured data? So these unstructured data, they do not have proper data types. Okay, they might be like your files, your PDF files that you have uploaded, your photos that you have uploaded, images from the CCTV cameras. They are all unstructured data. So processing such unstructured data it requires huge resource. Huge resource in the sense it might be database, it might be analytics, it might be reporting tools. They are all resource that is used for analyzing your data. So the amount of both structured and unstructured data started increasing in the digital content. So we have a firm called International Data Center, IDC, which estimated that around 487 billion gigabytes in the year 2000 alone was added in the net. And they also predicted that it would double every 18 months. So which was very huge data. It's a very huge amount of data where your regular databases was not able to manage. So this scenario is pointing towards the first issue that we started facing, that was data explosion or information explosion, or massive amount of data that has to be processed in your databases. So this is first issue. where regular databases were not able to manage. So here if you
Index the model so that we can group of several data.
There are 6 other callers on the call.
this profit analysis data, sales order data, all the data which comes under industry standards. And what I was explaining you was with the help of the digital content, with the help of your social media. Second issue that we started facing was consumerization of IT, and this is pointing towards real-time results. You have huge data, and that data has to be processed in real time or at least to near real time. So that is the expectations of your customers. Consumerization of IT is nothing but the clients started driving up their expectations from your organization to give the result in real time, anywhere, anytime, and they want them to be right. They want instant access to the data or instant access to the information. For example, take this scenario. You're working, you are a stockbroker, or you have put your shares, you have some shares in the stock market, and you want the real-time update. Even a minute of slow reporting can cause you a huge loss. That is not acceptable, correct? In such scenarios, it might be a delaying of an entertainment channel over your net. You have paid for it, and it's of no use if your cricket score is very slow, correct? It doesn't make any sense to us at that part. And if these are scenarios with respect to entertainment and money, then imagine if it's in the case of medical, or if it's in the case of military, or if it's in the case of a presentation to a global manager. It is something that you are not supposed to go slow. The reports have to be very fast. It has to be real time. Whatever the changes that is going in your trend, that has to be presented in your reports. That is something consumers are expecting from you. That is nothing but consumerization of IT, and this is pointing towards real-time data. The first one was massive amount of data, and second one was analyzing that massive amount of data in real time. So these were the very two critical issues that IT was not able to deliver. It had put IT in a tough place. This demanded immediate answer, demanded immediate solution, and that's where your SAP HANA comes into the picture. So we know that the existing databases were not able to address these solutions, and that's why we are going for SAP HANA. Now what are those features, or what is the technology that is making HANA different from your other databases? The first thing, we have some proof points which say that HANA is 3,600 times faster. It gives the data in real-time access. It allows you to do real-time access to transaction data, which is pretty faster if you compare to other databases. And still they're entering so many things, and which is really fast in getting you the data. Do you have any idea what makes HANA different from other databases? Like your other databases, it is also a relational database management system. Then what is that major difference that HANA and other databases have? I'll just unmute you all. Yes, so Surya has said that storage in memory. That is the very important point that you have to know in SAP HANA. That is because it's in memory technology. So whatever he said, storage in memory, it is nothing but in memory technology.
Muted.
I'm not sure, I'm hearing a background noise. So if you have anything to say, you can just tell over the chat. So as one of you mentioned, Surya has told that it's storage in memory. Correct. That is 100% correct. Then what was that every other database used to do it? Every other databases used to store their data in secondary storage. Okay. Storage in main memory is considered to be primary storage, whereas in other hard disks or other secondary memory that you have that you store your data, for example, it might be a floppy. Floppies are very obsolete now, or CDs or DVDs or your hard disk, whatever you have, that is secondary storage. Earlier, the databases used to be placed in the secondary storage. This is what you can observe here. Disk storage, your databases were placed in the disk storage. Your data movement was between your disk storage, then to your main memory, that is your primary memory, and then to your CPU. CPU or CPU cache. The data was used to be cached in the CPU, and later the data used to be processed in your CPU. So this was the whole process, and here we used to have a bottleneck, performance bottleneck, because our main memory or your RAM, in a simple way, it's a RAM, random access memory. In a simple, so if at all data is in secondary storage, the data has to move from your secondary storage to your main memory. The main memory capacity was very minimum, very less, which was once again causing you the performance bottleneck. Okay, and from the main memory, the data had to travel to the CPU. So which was once again the CPU had to always wait for the data to be processed. So this was a major hindrance for the performance. This was the input-output bottleneck. This entire architecture they have changed in HANA, where I'm not keeping my data in the secondary storage. I'm placing my entire data in my main memory, in my RAM. At the same time, I have increased the capacity of RAM. Earlier, the capacity of RAM was very less because it was too expensive for us. And now, yes, HANA is once again an expensive thing, but the logic that they have used is very simple. We all know that the data in RAM, the data that is stored in RAM is very easy to access to the CPU, and it is faster. The same logic they have used, and they have increased the capacity of RAM, and they have placed the entire data in the RAM. In-memory storage. That is nothing but in-memory storage. Now the CPU can easily access the data from RAM, and it can quickly process the data. So that is it. That is the logic that they have used, and they have implemented that logic in HANA database. Okay. So did you get this point? Whatever we were talking about in-memory storage. So did you get this point? You can just let me know through the chat. Yes, so here is, we have a question from Yuvan. So for how long an enterprise can store the data or data reports in the memory? So as long as it is not, what do we say? As long as we have issue with the storage storage, or you can also say that as long as we have any issue with your system or the servers, you can store your data. Let's assume that you had a catastrophe and your servers are destroyed, and this data, as it is stored in the main memory, the data is lost. Correct? Whenever you have your data in your main memory, if at all there is an outage, power outage. Simple example, if it's a power outage, you have to restart your system, your data is lost. Till your system is shut down, you can store your memory. That is one point. Now what happens after a system is shut down? What happens if I have to restart my system? What do I do then? My data is lost. Correct? That is one point. So for that reason, we still have a storage disk, but to take the backup. All my processing on my data happens on the main memory. Whatever data I process, whatever models I create, everything will be taken as a backup in the storage disk. It's just a backup process. no processing is happening on the storage disk. Everything happens on the main memory just as a backup in case my system goes out, my system fails. To do that failover, I have this storage disk. So if you observe that the data from the memory, you can find it in the storage disk. It is taken as a location, shared location where you can store your data. Did I answer your question, Yuan? Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Okay, so any limits? So limits depends upon your configuration of RAM. So in SAP BW, you have 300 GB of capacity that your databases can hold, correct? But in HANA, your RAM capacity, you can have up to 100 terabytes, 100 TB. So this capacity, or in the memory, it depends upon your memory capacity. For example, let's assume that you have 250 GB of RAM. So you can hold up to 500 GB or 400 or 450 GB of RAM. Let's assume that you have 100 TB of RAM, then you can go up to 500 TB. So it depends upon the compression as well, the compression feature as well. Okay, and this HANA is not a reporting tool. Okay, so that I'll be discussing once we are done with the session, because in between it might cause confusion for others who do not have experience with SAP. Let me just tell you what are the projects you have, projects you can work on, and what are the projects that I have worked on. So coming to the previous thing, previous question by, yes, I think you are in BW. So yes, as I told that the data, the capacity that SAP HANA holds depends upon the configuration that you have asked for, depends upon your client's requirement, like how much of data they have in their systems. And this HANA, it's reporting, we do not use it for reporting purpose. We would be using this as a data modeling tool where these models will be consumed by your reporting tools. So time-bound reports in order to consult or store for future references. So once again, yes, that depends upon the configuration of both your hardware and software configurations. So HANA is not just a software part, it is also an hardware combination. It's an appliance. If you observe here in that statement, we are saying that HANA and software. So your HANA is also an appliance, which is combination of hardware and software. So this combination, that is hardware and software, the software part is given to you by your SAP company, SAP AG company. The data package, the software database package is given to you by your SAP AG company. And the hardware configuration, for example, your RAM capacity and CPU cores, all this configuration is done by 9 hardware certified vendors. Okay, there are 9 companies who are certified with HANA who can provide you this configuration. Your hardware configuration is provided by these companies: Dell, Fujitsu, HP, IBM, Cisco, NEC, Hitachi, and further companies. And one more point here is the operating system. So HANA is compatible with SUSE Linux Enterprise Server 11. This is the operating system that is HANA is compatible with. The present version of HANA is 1.x or 1.0. You can call it as 1.0 or 1.x. And service pack is 0.8. We're already on 0.8. Okay. Let me answer the question at the end. So just complete this part, because the questions, as some of you might have already know some features of HANA and you might be very excited to know more. So let me just complete this basic overview. And the software editions that is available with HANA. So first few slides what we learned is the issues that we were facing and then what exactly the in-vivo technology is all about. And in next few slides we will be learning its other features. So another important point that you have to know before you start with SAP HANA learning is the available editions. The three different editions, one is platform edition, second one is enterprise, and third one is enterprise extended edition. So the components that is available with these editions differs. Okay, platform edition is for the customers who already have license for BODS. BODS is an ETL tool for SAP environment. There's business object data services which replicates the data from your source system into HANA database via batch process, ETL process. So if a customer says that he doesn't want any other process or method to replicate the data, he don't want to spend much on other systems, you already have license for this ETL tool, then you can go for this edition. And if at all a customer comes and tells to you that he wants real-time replication of data, okay, along with ETL process, sometimes he wants to go for ETL because of its feature, and sometimes he wants to go for real-time replication of data, then you can go for Enterprise Edition. Enterprise Edition has option for BODS as well as SLT. SLT is SAP Landscape Transformation, which is once again a replication method which does the data replication in real time. Okay, because in one of the previous slides we were talking about real-time results. So that is where you get from this particular method. Then we have Enterprise Extended Edition. So this is something the customer, if they want to avail all the features of HANA, then they will go for Enterprise Extended Editions. Okay, they will get BODS, they will get SLT, they will get Cyber Replication Method, all other features of HANA, whatever it is available, that can be explored in this Enterprise Extended Edition. So usually, most of the scenarios, you would end up having Enterprise Edition. Next comes the HANA software and hardware technology innovations. So initially, when we started the introduction to HANA, we got to know that the major or the groundbreaking role of HANA was in-memory technology. That made HANA different from its other counterparts. But apart from that, we also have other software technology innovations and hardware technology innovations which makes HANA better than its counterparts in the market. So some of its features are like combination of row and columnar storage. In most of the traditional databases, the data is stored in simple row-wise. Okay, we know that data in a table is a two-dimensional structure, and it is stored in row-wise. I'll explain you what is row and columnar storage, what is row-wise storage and columnar storage in our class in detail. So here in traditional, most of the databases, it would go for row storage. But in HANA, you have the combination of storing your data in row-wise as well as column-wise. So this increases the speed, flexibility and the performance of the HANA database and increases the performance of HANA database. Okay, how is that? In detail I'm going to explain it to you. Because columnar storage, it is like it has more advantages when compared to your row store. That in detail with the help of a diagram, I will be explaining it to you. Then we have one more feature called compression. So this is not a new thing in the database actually. We used to compress the data to save the resource, to save the memory resource, so that we can accommodate more data in that. So that was a usual technique that we used to do, and here with HANA, this technique, that is compression technique, is more efficient. That is why, because we go for columnar storage. The columnar storage, it privileges to have more compression rate, high compression rate, and on top of that, you can also apply different compression methods like run length coding, cluster encoding, or dictionary encoding. So one of these methods I will be explaining it to you. So how it happens in the compression. Next is partitioning feature. So this feature is also not a new thing for database. You would have seen this partitioning the data. Therefore, the query parallelization is facilitated. So this process is nothing new, but as we have the options of multi-core architecture, the HANA is capable of leveraging that multi-core architecture, and it partitions the data with different nodes, and then it facilitates to increase the query parallelization. So parallelization, so if you might have seen this parallelization in if you have multi-core architecture. For example, let's take your system, or it might be your mobile. So now your mobile is coming with the dual core. You have quadra-core as well, but you have 4 CPUs. So if one CPU is busy, what happens? Another CPU takes up that work and it completes. If third CPU is busy, 4th takes up, and once again the first one becomes free and first CPU takes up your process. So what happens? Your data is spread across all these 4 CPUs, and each CPU, whenever it is free, it picks up the data and it does the work. So that is nothing but your query. That is nothing but your parallel partitioning with the help of your hardware technologies. Next feature is aggregate table. So this for this you need to have a database background, where in the database we do aggregation of the tables and store that table separately to increase the performance. But in HANA, there is no necessity to have an aggregate table stored. That is because HANA's performance itself is very high. You can do the computation on the data on the fly. Okay, which means it's really very fast. You don't need to have, once again, aggregate tables. Indeed, you need no need to store the aggregate tables once again to increase the performance. And if you are a PI consultant, probably you might be getting this point, because in PI or VW, to tune the performance, we do the aggregation, correct? We create the aggregate tables. That thing is not required in HANA database to tune the performance, because performance itself is already high. There is no need to create an aggregate tables on top of the data. Next is inserting only on delta. So this is something which is related to the replication of data. Whenever you replicate the data, you have different update modes, whether it is initial, full, or delta. So in HANA it supports delta. I'll explain you what is initial, full, and delta with an example later. So these are some of the features that we have listed down here, which helps in HANA to be very fast when compared to other databases, apart from its in-memory technology. So hardware technology innovation. So this is the admin part. So we'll get to know like what configuration is needed for your requirement. So hardware configuration involves your multi-core architecture, your blade servers, RAM capacity, and hardware storage. So everything, it depends upon the client and the data that is available in the system. This is an overview of HANA architecture. So this is your HANA database part. You call it as in-memory computing engine. So each component of this in-memory computing engine we will be discussing in detail. What is session manager? What is application server? What is transaction manager? So this part would be sent to you. This part would be delivered to you by SAP AG company. This is where your data is stored in-memory computing engine. We have persistence layer and disk storage as well. So I will be discussing this with you in detail. So it has a complete different architecture class. And this is your HANA Studio, where you would be working on your data, the modeling part. Basically, as a consultant or as an admin, as a developer, you will be working on. You will be working with a studio. You would not be directly working on a database. You will be working with the instance of your database in your studio. And next, this is the source system they have shown here. The source system, it might be your ECC system, that is your SAP application, or any non-SAP systems. Okay, it might be your DB2, it might be your Oracle, any databases. You can connect to HANA database and do the modeling. And these are your reporting tools. So here you are seeing the SAP reporting tools, SAP Business Suite reporting tools, but it's not the case. You can connect to any reporting tool. You can connect to the Cognos, you can connect to the Tableau visualization, you can connect to any other reporting tools which are compatible with the SAP systems. So typically this architecture, it is representing the SAP environment, but HANA, let me tell you, it's not only for SAP environment. You can implement HANA in non-SAP environment as well. So it's a database. It's just a database like Oracle or DB2. You can implement it anywhere. So next topic, after you have an introduction to HANA, the next flow would be doing the data provisioning. That is, replicating your data from different sources into HANA database. You have your SAP ERP system, or it might be from a BW system, or it might be any resource. If you want to get your data from these resources into HANA database, you should be using first approach, that is ETL approach, and for that you should be using an ETL tool. Here we are using a BODS. And once again, this BODS is an SAP environment. You can use any ETL tool that is compatible for HANA. You can use the Informatica if you know how to connect it, you can do it and get the data into your DB2. Sorry, get the data from DB2 into HANA database. So it's an ETL based approach. I would be discussing this both theoretical and practical in our lab class. So how exactly it works, and this BODS itself is a separate course. We will be discussing the BODS with respect to HANA in our class. We will not discuss entire BODS, how the tool works, but we would be discussing how to use this tool for our scenario. First approach is ETL, the BODS we are using, and second approach is trigger-based replication method, where a trigger is sent to execute the data, and then we have the data replicated in our database. So this also we would be dedicating 1 or 2 classes on replication part of SLT. Another 2 methods you have direct extractor connection and Sybase event stream process, or it's a Sybase replication method. Let's just HANA Studio features. So what exactly we'll be doing on the Studio? The first thing is modeling, data preview, import or export, data provisioning, analytic privileges. So these are some of the features that I have mentioned that you would do it on this Studio. So what is Studio? So I've been mentioning about this Studio. Apart from database, I've been saying that HANA Studio. So HANA Studio is an Eclipse based IDE, that is integrated development environment, where you develop your objects and implement it on in the repositories. You work on the repositories and you tend to develop the models, you do the administration part, you do the data provisioning part. Everything will be done in the HANA Studio and not on the database directly. Okay. Next is course module. So before going to the course module, probably they might have given you the course module. Let me just give you the brief introduction about so here, as I told that I would be taking up the course based on the SAP HANA consultant. So this is typically a developer course. For HANA we have 2 types. One is admin and second one is developer. For admin course you have to go through HA100 and HA200, and whereas for developer or consultant to be, you have to go through HA100 and HA300. So what is this HA100 and 300? So in SAP you have a course defined for particular topics by SAP company, by SAP AG, for a certification purpose or to be an certified consultant or certified associate consultant. You would have the different courses to follow. So the same courses we are following in our session where we are going through HA100 and HA300. Apart from that, we would have a small introduction to BW as well, BW on HANA as well. So admin part we would not be covering. We would be typically covering the consultant part, consultant or developer part. Okay. And as a HANA consultant, you would have implementation projects, and if it's BW on HANA, you would have upgrade projects. So as of now, as HANA is a very new thing. It's been introduced to the market 2 years back. It was around 2011 or something. It was introduced in the first quarter. So as of now, you will find most of implementation projects. So after this, after all the implementation is done, you might go for support project. Upgrade project, it might be from BI 7.0 or other version 2, BW 7.3 or 7.4 will be the upgrade process. Once again, which BW 7.3 onwards, you find it on HANA database. That is why we call it as BW on HANA. The earlier version, it might be on SQL server, or it might be on Oracle server, or it might be on DB2 server. We are migrating that into the BW 7.4. For this, which you might require some BW knowledge as well. If not, the SAP environment you have, the implementation projects might take in SAP environment or in non-SAP environment. In SAP environment, typically it will be from ECC systems, from your ERP or ECC system source, you would be bringing the data into HANA database. Non-SAP environment, you might not have any SAP things, SAP related systems in your non-SAP environment. You might have to bring your data from DB2 to HANA database. You might store it in the Hadoop. You might use once again SAP ERP just to get the data into HANA and then remove the entire ECC system. So this has both SAP and non-SAP environment. But in the job market, if at all you want to get into SAP stream, then they might look for some BI knowledge. Okay. If not, as a HANA consultant, if you want to enter into the market, there is no prerequisite as such, only the database concept. And if you are having a good knowledge on SQL scripting, that should be doing good. Okay. So basically, I wanted to show you the type of projects that you can work on typically. First is Enterprise HANA. Second one is BW on HANA. Third is Suite on HANA. So this is a new one, or you call it as Business Suite on HANA or Suite on HANA. The Enterprise HANA, so this can be in any environment. It might be in SAP or non-SAP environment. Okay, you might be using the SAP as your source system, bring the data into HANA, do the developing part. Or you can be using your DB2 as your database, bring the data from your DB2 into HANA database and do the modeling part. This is one scenario. BW, it's typically the SAP environment. Suite on HANA, it can be an SAP or it might not be an SAP environment. So the one currently I'm working is with Suite on HANA, where it's typically a SAP environment where you're getting your data from ECC system into HANA database. And this particular project is typically a very different thing, where we are using all new technologies in the project. From this HANA database, I have to host the data into NoSQL database. NoSQL database, here we are using is Cassandra. So this is a typical project scenario that I am working. So this might not be the case for you. It might be the different thing. So I'm just taking the example of my project, where from my ECC system, it's Suite on HANA. Therefore, I don't need to have any data provisioning. Whatever the data provisioning that we were discussing, right, those method is not required here for me, because I already have my data on the database, HANA database. So therefore, ECC system to HANA is already available for me. Now I have to develop the models, and then I have to find a way to push this data to Cassandra. Why Cassandra? Because I am developing a e-commerce platform so where the very huge e-commerce platforms like your Flipkart or eBay, or it might be Amazon, everything works on NoSQL database. The data is cached in the NoSQL database. That is because the NoSQL database, they are distributed and they're elastic in the performance. We have a new word called elastic in the performance, which means that I can place this NoSQL database, install this NoSQL databases in different data centers, and I can have this elastic kind of performance with this NoSQL databases. NoSQL databases is different from your relational databases. The HANA is relational database. It has this SQL. Here NoSQL, it doesn't have SQL scripting, it has CQL. We call it a CQL. So that is altogether a different topic. We need not discuss that. So I'm just trying to give you some information so how and all you can implement. So SQL scripting you have for NoSQL database. I have to cache my HANA models, whatever I have created in HANA database, into the Cassandra, and whatever the cache data is available, that is searched from the e-commerce platform. So this is typically mixture of both SAP and non-SAP environment, I can say. Apart from the data in my EC system, I do not have any connectivity to any of the other EC systems, any of my SAP systems. So it is a mixture of both SAP and non-SAP environment, because we also bringing into the picture Cassandra, Hadoop, and Solar, all other technologies, open sources. And this BW on HANA that I have worked with is typically the SAP systems, where my BI system is sitting on top of HANA database. I am using the mixed scenarios. I am using the models, that is calculation views, and the info cubes that is available in the BW on HANA, and combining, I am creating the transient providers or other providers mixed scenarios and giving it to the reporting. So this is typically SAP environment. An enterprise HANA, so this would be a separate HANA box for you, where from different sources you can get the data into HANA database and do the modeling part. So this is typically might be a SAP or non-SAP. This we had worked on insurance data, life insurance data, that is basically the pension or something, the first project. So typically we had a separate HANA box where we had our system was based on DB2, our ECC system. So from the DB2 we had to bring it to HANA database, the same process, whatever the process that we use, data provisioning, BODS or SLT, the same thing we used, and we brought into HANA. And then it was like we created the models on top of HANA database. Basically, as a consultant, you should be looking into the more modeling part. Okay, you will be working on modeling of the data. So that is your main concern here. So in this video on HANA, as I told, the data provisioning might also get obsolete. You might use data provisioning to get the data from HANA to Cassandra or different other sources. Okay, so data provisioning is also important, but it's more of admin concern. But as a consultant or as a developer, you should be looking into the modeling part. In the modeling itself, you have to try and get the best practices to implement your models so that the performance doesn't affect. There should not be a performance degrade after you create the models. Okay, you have to do the performance testing. You have to try with different models. The way you create the models might differ. For example, the way that I create the model might be something renders me the data within 50 seconds, but some of you might create the model which might render the data within 25 seconds. So that differs. The modeling way also differs. You should always go and practice the industry standards, and then you have to create the models. So creating the models is a very simple thing. So HANA is, as a whole, if I have to say, it's a database where you need to know how to create the models, and it's a very simple module in SAP history. All other modules it has, it is a bit complicated when you compare to HANA database. Your BI might be, when you learn HANA and after learning HANA, if you go for BI, you feel that BI is a bit complicated. And same with SD or MM or any other both functional and technical model. They are a bit complicated when compared to the HANA. But HANA is very simple. You can easily learn HANA. You need to worry at all while learning HANA. Only thing is you should be strong enough in SQL scripting thereafter. Okay, because you might have to write the procedures, you might have to write the CE functions to increase the performance. Okay. So BW on HANA, this is once again the separate course. We would not be covering the BW on HANA here. Okay, if you want to go for BW on HANA, it's you have to go for the separate course, but I will be giving you an introduction for BW on HANA. Okay, course patch, so it is already defined here. It's already, I think they have already given to you as well. Lab session, you would be getting 1 month server access for you to practice your HANA sessions. And if you want to extend, you can do it. So you can now type down your questions. Now we'll have a Q&A session where I had addressed 2 or 3 questions before. Let me go back and check if I have left any. Okay, the storage in memory, that was answered by Surya, correct? And we have Pankaj, store the data in the hard disk for other databases. Yes, absolutely. For how long can you store the data? That is, as I told, that until your system goes outage or there is a power outage or system fails, you can store your data. And as and when you are creating the data or creating the models, what happens? You would be taking the backup of the data. So this, whenever we are talking about the storage of the data, think with respect to a application purpose. So for example, it's a banking application. I have 500 GB of data. So how is that? How much config and what is the configuration I have to go for this banking application? So in that scenario or in that path, you need to think when we will be talking about storing the data. So how many memory does HANA require to perform accordingly? So memory here in the sense, if you're asking for memory, so once again it depends upon the data that you have here. Okay, the amount of data that you have in your client's place. Okay, for example, in my system that we are working on here, it's something, we have very huge data. We are all this data, I think around 500 GB is as of now we have. So it might increase. They are getting all their old systems to the new system, so it might increase. So the configuration might also, we might have configuration up to 1 TB of RAM. So that is something, it depends upon the data that is already available in your system. Here time limits, as in BW, a medium level enterprise work with almost 300 GB to 600 GB of data business reports. So parameters from SAP for time bound reports in order to consult or store for future reference. So here, as I told, that you would be just doing the data models. Everything is stored in your main memory. You don't have any such time limits where you will say that you can go on increasing. That is a BW, it's an OLAP system, whereas HANA, it supports both OLAP and OLTP. So we do not have any difference. I mean, we do not have difference in applications when we are storing the data in HANA database for OLTP or OLAP. So as in BI system, so BI system, it increases everything of yours. It increases a big, huge data warehouse. So here, compare the data warehouse of yours to HANA database system, on top of which you are doing the modeling. It's not exactly the BI system that we are using as HANA. It's the data warehouse of your BI, which is the component of your BI system. So HANA is a what you can say that it's a component of your BI system. If at all you're considering in business intelligence in SAP environment, and your HANA database would be a component of it. So projects that I have worked on, I've just given the brief introduction to those projects. The client can have utilized size of RAM for HANA, or it is used in the hybrid combination like normal hard disk with RAM. No. See, the hardware, whatever we are using, the combination here we are not using along with, there is no connectivity between your RAM and your hard disk. The hard disk you're using just to take the backup, that's it. All the process, it happens on your RAM. Your client or you, when you're working, you would be utilizing the RAM on HANA, for HANA. It's not the hybrid combination. So hybrid combination, whenever we are referring here, it's the storage combination, storage methods in HANA that we are using in the RAM. It might be row store, or it might be column store, or it might be object-oriented store. Yes, it is both OLTP and OLAP data. No Indian company, I didn't get this U1. Just come back to that. Cluster solution, yes, you have clustering. You do the clustering where you have multiple nodes, that you have a shared data for that clustering. So we're discussing this clustering scenario in our failover system. Yes, the clustering solutions, whatever that you have, as told by here, it depends upon the vendors who are giving you the configurations. So Hitachi gives you its own clustering solution, IBM gives its own clustering solution, HP, Cisco, they give their own clustering solution. Yes, somebody has already answered. The clustering is multi-node partitioning. SLT replication cases. Yes, SLT replication for real-time replication scenarios, you have to go for SLT. So let's assume that it's something okay, what I was talking about, the SLT scenario. So SLT, as I told you, it's a real-time scenarios. If at all you are required to have, for example, let me take the scenario here, e-commerce scenario. It's a Flipkart or something. Let's take an example of a Flipkart, which is based in India. I'll go into that web page and I'll search for the HANA books. Okay, this scenario, this data, I need to get in real time. Correct? It has to show me the stocks that is available for today or whichever date range I'm giving for. It should not show me something old dated or improper data is not acceptable. So in such cases, you need to go for SLT, where it replicates the data in real time. As and when the changes are made at the source level, that data has to be reflected within no time in your modeling. Or in this case, it is in Cassandra. It has to be replicated in HANA database, and within no time it has to be replicated in the Cassandra, and the same data has to be replicated for me in my page. Whenever I give that material number and product name, material name, HANA book, it has to show me the rate, cost of a price for that, and when it is the availability model. So for this, we are developing both pricing model and availability model, where my data has to be real time. Okay. So course module, I think they have already shared with you, or probably you can just check with them about the course module. So what database you will use for data extraction? So here we are not taking as a database thing. They would be considering the SAP application. So your SAP application might be available on any database. it might be on MS SQL, it might be on DB2, or it might be on Oracle. So we would be concentrating on how to do the extraction from your SAP application to your HANA database. So project example, we would be looking into two scenarios. One is COPA scenario. Second one is finance data. And apart from that, I will also be sharing some of the experiences or some of the modeling concepts that we have used in our real-time projects. Yes, you would be getting more of real-time scenarios as well as some of the example data like e-fashion data initially to work on. So there later on you can develop COPA scenario. We would be developing together. Finance scenario, I would ask you to develop it and finish that work. Yes, you would be looking into all the necessary steps of the modeling. So Sybase replication, one more thing here, Sybase replication would be used by only those companies who are invited by SAP during their product delivery or testing. So it is not used by other companies. Okay, so here we do not have the Sybase replication method, and we would not be using Sybase replication method anymore because we have something called smart data access. Directly from the smart data access, you can get the data from the Sybase database. We can get the data from Hadoop. You can get the database from data from the MaxDB, Teradata. So it's not necessary to have Sybase replication method here. Recorded session, yes, I'll be sending out to the organization, to the organizer probably. So he would be able to send it to you. Starting, I think you need to check with yes, starting you can just check with organizer, with the institution when that they would be starting. When we were saying that only 8 or 9, it's actually 9 companies who are authorized for installing. Yes, installing, or you can say to provide you the configuration that you require. So for example, the HANA configuration is given to you by SAP company. Like you are authorized to get the SAP package worldwide. Yes, worldwide it is only 9 companies. They would give you the installation package, the entire installation, that is hardware configuration for you for your HANA solution, depending upon your requirement.